right, the floor is yours, Vinney. And do we get to meet your lovely wife and your daughter tonight?
Yeah, oh, come on. This is my wife. This is Andrea.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi.
This is technically her school right here, where I'm sitting. So she works in education and works with little kids. So yeah, she's let me borrow her space for tonight.
Beautiful. Well, thank you.
Just remember, adventure awaits.
That is cool.
Backwards.
No, okay.
All right. Well, so back in 2003, I was a big fitness guru at the time. Me and my best friend were, and we had tried a couple of different supplements that we found some great success with. And one of those back then was called Furanode Hydro. And it was a supplement that would help your muscle recovery happen a lot quicker than normal. And we found a lot of success with that. So me and my buddy were trying to find it everywhere. GNC was always sold out. All these different supplement places were always sold out. So we went online and bought some online. And when we did, we didn't realize what you buy online, especially from Thailand, is not the same stuff you get in the United States. And so when it came, we took our normal dosage and it ended up being about 20 times too much. And so instantly we both felt really sick. And next we decided we were going to go to a restaurant to maybe eat something and feel a little bit better. So a few blocks down the road from his house where he was living, there was a Dairy Queen. So we went down there, and instantly when we even pulled up, I knew I wasn't even going to make it to order any food. I was just so sick. So I personally went straight into the bathroom, and it was one of those single bathrooms, and I locked the door because that's what you do in those bathrooms. My buddy, in the meantime, he went inside and collapsed on a booth right by the front door, and he started vomiting, and the manager called 911, and they got an ambulance, and they pulled away with him. In the meantime, though, nobody knew I was in the bathroom, so I was in there for anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes. I had a phone that was in there with me, and it kept ringing and ringing and ringing. Finally, a customer recommended that the manager go in there to see if somebody's okay, because they can hear her phone keep ringing. And so the manager, he opened up the door to this bathroom and found me dead on the floor. I had no heartbeat, no breath rate, or no breath coming out of my nose or my mouth. I had suffocated on my own vomit, pretty much. I had fallen backwards in the bathroom and passed out, and after that, I had started to vomit. So that was my passing. I went straight from my consciousness. I went straight from seeing the bathroom begin to spin around me to all of a sudden it felt like I was sitting in a dark movie theater watching a movie. And that movie that I was watching was kind of the upward point of view of this bathroom where this body was on the floor. And it's the hardest thing to experience and describe unless you've ever played video games. Because in video games, you can your consciousness be sitting in a chair over here, but yet you're seeing action down below that you're controlling. To me, I didn't put that together. To me, I felt still separate from what was going on below me. And so I didn't know what was going on below me with that dead body, that it was me. So I just started feeling bad for the manager, number one, because I could see just the energy, the turmoil that was going on around him as he found this dead body, and he had to call 911 for a second time in an hour. And so he called, and they got an ambulance there. They did pronounce me DOA. They put me in a body bag. They had a bunch of paperwork. They took their time, about probably 45, 50 minutes of paperwork. They loaded me into the ambulance, and they drove away to take me to a medical examiner. And about a block away from the restaurant, one of the newest medics, he was in fact a greenie, brand new EMT, he felt a really strong premonition. And from my perspective, this is the way I saw it, is I'm still thinking this is outside myself. I don't know it's me down there inside that body bag. I see this light come around the head of this man who's sitting in the back of the ambulance. And I see this light come around him like a glow. And then all of a sudden I hear a voice say to him, "This one's not dead." And I could see him, he definitely heard it. And he looked around and he kind of looked to see if one of his buddies was playing a trick on him. And he waited just a couple more minutes, and then it got louder and bright. So this light got brighter around him. And then it almost was like a yelling voice. "This one is not dead." So when he heard the second time, he didn't even hesitate. He immediately unzipped the body bag. He started feeling around the vital areas for any type of pulse or anything. It was really weird because I could almost feel him touching the body in different places, even though I was feeling so separate from what was going on. And I was up in what felt like kind of a movie theater type place and looking at this on a screen. But I could feel as he was, reaching around, touching the vital areas. And when he reached in and got in on the inside thigh, he was feeling for like a strong pulse of some sort there. I felt like a spark, like kind of a shock, a little electrical shock from me up where I was sitting remotely through to him. And still, as ignorant as I was in my place, I still did not recognize that was my body down there. And so he instantly started to react. As soon as he felt that shock, he knew, he was like, "I need to do everything I can to bring this guy back." So first thing he did is he did a tracheotomy on me right there, started feeding a tube down into the lungs and started pumping some air in there. He also brought out cut off my shirt and brought out the paddles and started shocking me. After the third shock, the first two shocks, the other two medics sitting in front of the ambulance were making fun of him. They were yelling at him saying, "You're an idiot, this guy's dead, let him go." But he kept going. And then the third shock, he got a very weak heart rate. And as soon as the first blips came out on that monitor that they had, the other two medics, were stunned. And what was really neat though, is all of this took place about 3 blocks from a hospital. So as soon as my body was brought back, as soon as my heart was brought back, they were 3 blocks away. There was a trauma unit there ready to meet me. And still where I was, from my perspective, I still had no idea it was my own body. So I'm watching this and I'm actually feeling an extreme amount of empathy for whoever's going through this trauma of this dead body coming back alive. Yeah, I felt extreme empathy even for the medics who are having to deal with all of this. And I watched as they pulled up to the hospital. They take the gurney out and they switch the body, out of the body bag over onto an ICU bed or ICU type of gurney of sorts. And still, I'm just feeling empathy for everyone involved in the situation. And they go to put these straps on the body, because as the body first came back alive, the body did start to go into like convulsions, and the body tried to throw up and started to actually go into seizures. And I don't know if that's normal, but that's what was going on. As they did that, they realized they needed to strap the body down. So they at the hospital bed, they put these straps on both arms and both legs. As they put them on the legs, I didn't feel anything. But when they put them on the arms, I actually felt like my arms were being strapped to the seat of where I was sitting up remotely away from what was going on below me. And I was like, no, nobody controls me. And so I remember I pulled my left arm and I actually pulled it free. And as I did, I looked down to see my arm free here in front of me. And I looked down and I saw the left arm of the body ripped free from the strap. It actually tore the strap. And that was when I had kind of like that Hollywood moment where like don't, like, oh my gosh, this is my own body. I've been watching this whole time. It's my body. Before that, I had no idea. There was not even an inkling that was my body I was watching down below. But at that moment, all of a sudden I went, from this like comfortable, warm place where I was watching all of this to all of a sudden I felt this like dark fear and an anguish starting to suffocate me and squeeze me in where I was, where my consciousness was up away from the body. And I remember that it was getting to a point where it felt like I was gonna, like my spirit was gonna die because of this suffocation of fear and anguish around me, when I started to feel this little dot of warmth on my back. And it's kind of like when you're sitting out on a cloudy day and the clouds part and the sun shines on your back. That's what it felt like. All of a sudden I started to warm from my back forward, and all of a sudden that darkness started to lift off me, and it was being replaced by this light. Just this light is, there's no way to really describe this light. This is the part I have a really hard time with. This light, 5 seconds in this light is worth 1 million lives of turmoil and trauma and hardship. There's just no describing it, because it's pure, unconditional love. And that's what this light is, and that's God's light. And it just absolutely surrounded me. And as it did, I could feel a presence behind me. And so I turned away from this like situation that was going on below me. I turned and I looked to see this old man with, he looks kind of like the movie Jesus, movie God or movie Jesus, really long white beard, very white hair, very rosy complexion with just piercing blue eyes. And so the first thing I asked him, I asked, "Hey, are you God?" And he just laughed at me and he's like, "No, I'm not God." And then so I'm like, "Well, are you Jesus?" And he said, "No, I'm not Jesus." And I asked him, "Well, who are you?" And he said, "Well, everyone here calls me Drake, and you can call me Drake. I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to help you. If you want to go with me, we can go to your real home, or you can go back to where you came from just now, back to the third dimension or the lower world." And of course, there was no question. Just that instant, that little moment of feeling God's light, there was absolutely no question. You couldn't turn away from that. Once you started to feel that, there was just no question. I wanted to go with him wherever that light came from. That's where I wanted to go. And so he said that he would help me. He'd help me get to where that light came from. But it would be a little bit of a journey. And not only would it be a journey of distance, it would be a journey of frequency, and it would be a journey of understanding. And those are one and the same. Understanding and frequency are the same, that I have to understand certain things to get to higher frequencies so I could get closer to that kingdom where that love was permeating through to me. And so he said he was going to be my guide. And so we began our journey, and it felt like we were traveling not just physical distances, but etherical distances and understandings and frequency, literally raising our frequency as we go. He knew how to instantly get himself there, and he could be in heaven in an instant, but I couldn't. I had to, kind of graduate slowly, because where I was coming from was such a low place. This place we exist here is such a low place that I had to, make that progress slowly. And it was really neat though, because I was raised Christian. I was raised LDS Mormon, and so that gave me a good kind of foundation to build and lift off of. But I also have had a very different life. I served a mission in Southeast Asia. So I was able to study Buddhism while I also taught Christianity. And I was also able to study, since then, prior to my experience, a lot of different religions and Christian theology. So I was really well versed in a lot of the different beliefs in Christianity, as well as Buddhism and Hinduism, and a little bit with Islam. And so with all of that understanding, it really helped me build me a foundation to launch from with my guide, Drake. So he helped me through so many principles, and to even put a number on how many principles you couldn't. but I can tell you that by the time I could actually see a destination of light, I had to become almost pure love myself. I had to get to this frequency where it's impossible to judge or think negative towards anyone. Impossible, no matter who they are. From Gandhi, Mother Teresa to Hitler, you cannot think something negative towards another being. The same way that one finger can't cut the other, because we're all one part of God, all of us. And once I got to that point where that judgment had completely left me, and I had left that ego completely down here in the third dimension, and I had shed off my physical self, I was able to get to this place. And as we approached, I could see this planet, and it's crazy because when you're far away from this planet, it actually looks like a sun. As you get closer and closer, you realize it's not a sun, even though it's putting out more light than our sun does. It's actually emitting light from everything on it, and it's a planet. It's an actual place. And as we approached it, I could see all these orbs of light around the planet, around this kingdom. And as we approached it, I could notice that there was angels, and I say angels like real angels, surrounding all these different orbs outside this planet. And instantly, I was very, very interested in everything that was going on around me. And my guide Drake thought it was kind of funny that I wanted to know about everything, from science to religion to theology to belief systems to everything. I wanted to know it all. And he just thought it was really funny because he said a lot of people are not like that. They like to go one path. And he's like, you want to go a million paths? And I'm like, yeah, I want to go a million paths. But he helped me with just a quick understanding what was going on in these orbs. So inside of these orbs, a lot of different religions have descriptions of what these orbs are. Some people might call it purgatory or some type of place of punishment, but it's not by a sense that God created it for them. It's this place that we create for ourselves. And so within these orbs, these small orbs of light outside the planet, being protected by these angels, is a bunch of spirits. In each one, there's just thousands of spirits. And I was able to see and see a couple of spirits, what was going on in their own personal path. And one gentleman I could see was from like around the late 1800s, early 1900s, just by the way he looked from his outside. And I could see he was yelling, he was angry, he was spitting all sorts of obscenities and anger towards his son. But his son had long since gone to heaven, or where I was going, wanting to go. But here he was, his dad, stuck in this orb of light outside, and he was just so full of anger and so full of like injustice and how he was wronged and hurt by his son, and what his son did to him. He was just really, really angry, and he was. It's so weird because he was spitting all these obscenities and mean words and mean energy towards this other lady, which was not his son, but he couldn't see her. He was only seeing his son in his own eye. And this other lady was like doing the same thing back at this guy, but about her brother. And it was just a bunch of these spirits or souls trying to expel or get out all this negative energy associated with victimhood or with injustice of some sort that they felt went on in their life. And it was really cool because you could see that this guy finally got to a point where he just stopped and he took a deep breath, and he just sat there and realized, this isn't doing anything. I need to just let this out. And so when he did, he took this deep breath and then realized, he's like, oh my gosh, where am I? And as he looked around, within like a millisecond, there was one of these angels from the outside was there, and then they were gone. And so these little orbs were places for spirits to go on their journey to cleanse themselves. Some people might call it of karma, or it's a place to cleanse themselves of negative energies, specifically associated with the ego and with self-victimhood. Because we have to understand whenever we feel we're a victim of something, that it's kind of like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies. It won't happen. It only hurts us. So when we don't forgive, that's the kind of place that we end up in. And we have to shirk that off. We have to work it out and cleanse ourselves of that before we can get to the ultimate frequency of love, to be at this kingdom where I was trying to go. And it was really cool. All that happened, and it takes a few minutes to describe, but all that happened in an instant. I just saw a few seconds of this. It all happened, and then back I was on my journey with Drake again. And as we were approaching this planet, I could actually see that there was mountains and rivers and lakes and buildings and just gorgeous, beautiful scenery all over the planet. And the planet itself is, from my perspective, it had to be, I would say, millions of times larger than Earth. It's huge, huge. And as we approached, we started to touch down on this little hill, and he showed me that we were touching down through intention. So he showed me, this is how you touch down, as you use your intention to get here. And through your intention, you can actually land and touch on this place. So that's what happened. We touched down on this place, and the first thing I remember experiencing was the feeling of grass between my toes. And I started to laugh, because I'm like, how can I feel grass between my toes if I'm just a spirit? And Drake explained to me that my form there is more physical than my physical form in the third dimension. And even though that's hard to understand, but in the spirit form up there, we call it a spirit form. It's actually bigger and larger than what our physical forms are here. And we kind of like shrink down to live in these little bodies here. And then we go back to our normal size there. And our normal size is much bigger than we are here, according to our light, how much light we have. And so it was really neat. I got to actually feel the grass. But one of the coolest things I remember is the second that my feet touched the grass, I could taste the grass. I could smell the grass. I could actually hear music coming off the grass. And I could feel love coming from the grass. And I could actually feel consciousness coming from the grass. And this is just simple green grass. And to me, that's a little sentiment of what it's like there, is if you could even feel one blade of that grass in your hands and experience it, you would completely change your life. Completely. That just a simple blade of grass is full of so much love, it would probably explode our planet. I mean, that whole existence there is so much larger and bigger and greater than our experience here. That's why what goes on here is so important, because what goes on here helps dictate what we can do there. And the next thing I remember is that I wanted to experience more than just grass. And so the second I thought that, instantly I was now seeing flowers. And I wasn't just seeing them from a distance. It was like my vision, I could zoom in and be right on a flower like I was a bee. And then I could be back in myself again instantly, just with my intention itself. So I could experience a flower like a bee would, but I could also experience it like a human would, and just experience the whole thing with omnipresence. And next I got to experience a little bit of what water was like there too. So I really tapped into the fact that kingdom, God is that kingdom. And there's a presence of God, a consciousness of God that is separate from us, but also that is us, all as one. And that kingdom there is God, and that God dwells within the blade of grass, the same that God dwells within us. And we have the spiritual DNA. And when I say spiritual, over there, that DNA is stronger and better than our physical DNA here. We carry that DNA with us eternally. And that spirit DNA is God. So that means all of us here in our presence in the third dimension have that God DNA within us, that light within us. And that's our journey here, is so that we can delve in and dive in and find that love, feed it, help it to grow, use intention to build things, and then we can go back and be even stronger and better so that we can continue to do even better there. Because that was one of the things I had to learn, is why do we come down here? And it's kind of like saying, well, let's do this scenario where we take a child and raise them in Disneyland. How many hard lessons are you going to learn in Disneyland? Especially with a parent who just gets you anything you want. And that's what it's like to be around God, is when we're in God's kingdom, that kingdom exists because of that all-permeating love of God, so that when we want something, it just starts to form itself in front of us, anything we want. Now, the funny thing is, we can't have lower thoughts there. So we can't have bad thoughts, evil thoughts, ego thoughts, because we're there with God. So, being in that kingdom, it's really hard for us to use intention and use it for good, because anything we want is going to be good because we're right near God. We're right near that divine white light of God, that divine love of God. So that's why we come down here to the third dimension. It's like a spiritual gym. It's a place where we can go work out our spirit and learn to work those spiritual muscles so we can grow them with resistance, the same way you do in a gym. But if you go back up to heaven, there is no resistance. Everything we want, we get with true intent and love, with God's love. So that's why it's so important for us to learn the power of intention here, the power of doing good things because we want to do them here, is we're able to build those muscles that otherwise we can't build in heaven. And that's one of the reasons why we're in this perfect plan of God, is for us to come down, do a couple of gym sessions. Some of us get, bulk right up spiritually, and we can go back up and stay there. Others have to keep going to the gym every day. So that's a little lesson of why you find some people have a lot of lives and some people only have one or two. Everybody's different. Everybody has a divine path specifically for you. Everybody. And right as soon as I started to notice all this nature, I did notice this big building. And I came from the building trades. I kind of grew up in it. I started working in the building trades when I was 14 and worked all the way through college and everything in the building trades. So I knew carpentry very well and masonry. And I noticed this building made of white marble, and it seemed to be a miracle, just the existence of it. And I was helped to understand that this marble building existed out of love because the marble loved God. And so the marble became this building for God. And if you wanted to enter a room, there was no doorway. You would just come, and if you had the right frequency, the building would just open up. You would go into the room, and then it would just completely be sealed. And this entire building was built out of one piece of marble, and it was living. And it's such a high frequency, and it's just, we live here where marble is a very low frequency. It's actually higher than us, but it's a low frequency. And it takes a lot of time for marble to move, but it's actually like a liquid there. But it's gorgeous. It was luminescent. There was light coming from inside of it. And, me coming from the building trades, I was very fascinated by that. And I was focusing on that when I heard my guide, Drake. He said, now this is going to be hard, but it's going to be worth it. And when he said that, I started to hear a blessing being given. And a blessing in the LDS or Mormon faith, it's a special prayer that a loved one will do over your head. And so I was getting a blessing on my physical body, but it was amazing. Where I was there in heaven, I was actually hearing it as if it was being said in my ears right next to me. And I'd already been given 2 of those blessings, and I felt them, but they kind of slowed me down a little bit, but my intention, my will was way stronger than that. And I pushed right through. Now this third one, now mind you, this is my 3rd day that I've been in a coma, that this is happening. My brother gave it to me, and my brother and I have had a little bit of a rough relationship as a younger kids, and 2 years apart, always trying to be the bigger, better, stronger person. We also have had kind of a soul connection our whole life because we've been through a lot of hard things together too. And so he started to say that blessing, and I knew that my free will was gone at that point. And so there was no intention that I could control anymore. And I was kind of lassoed or lassoed and started to begin feeling someone kind of wrapping around my middle and pulling me away from where I was. And it was really weird because it felt like it took years of progress to get there, and it only took an instant to get back. I felt like I was yanked right back into my body from that point. I didn't even feel the motion of distance anymore. I felt like I went straight from heaven to a hospital bed. And kind of the logistics of it is my brother had said that blessing at about 10 p.m. and I woke up at 1 a.m. And I woke up at 1 a.m. On a Monday, and I had gone in the hospital on a Saturday. So I had spent essentially 3 days in heaven in a coma. And when I woke up, the first thing I did was I pulled off all the life support stuff, everything. They had catheters, they had breathing tubes, they had everything. I yanked it all off, and then I just stood there naked in the room. I felt so claustrophobic. I felt like I was being suffocated just to be existing in this low dimension. And it was at that point that I recognized what was going on around me. So I went over to the cupboard and I opened the cupboard and I ransacking it for some gowns and like wrapped them around me. And I decided I was going to somehow walk home from the hospital just with like 3 hospital gowns wrapped around me. And so I walked out of the room and went down to the hospital elevator, and I hit the down button. And I remember right when I hit the down button, I heard screaming. I looked back and there was a nurse that was screaming in my room. She probably went in there to check why all these sensors went to flatline just all at once, and then there was no body there. And so I heard her scream, and then I was pushing that button. I was up on like the 4th floor, so I was waiting for that elevator to come. And before it even came though, the nurse had come out to the hallway and met another nurse, and the 2 nurses like were talking, and then they both looked down and saw me at the elevator, and then they both screamed. And then I knew I was in trouble. So they came and got me. They forced me back in the room. And I told them I was fine, and that I wanted to go home. And one of them said, "You're not fine. You were brain dead 15 minutes ago. You're not fine." And I said, "No, I'm fine." I'm like, "Give me a battery of tests, whatever you need. Make me sign whatever I need to sign. I'm fine." And so, from 1 a.m. until 6 a.m., with about a phone book worth of paperwork signed, we had to have a neurologist sign off on it, a cardiologist sign off on it, a breathing specialist sign off on it, everybody sign off so that I couldn't sue anybody if I just fell over dead after I walked away. And after we signed all that paperwork, I was able to leave. So I went in the hospital Saturday morning around 10 or 11 in the morning. And then I left about 7:30, 8 a.m. on a Monday. So I had my Saturday, Sunday, and part of Monday in heaven. One of the coolest parts of the story, though, is I really thought that I've been a very scientific type-minded person my whole life, and I've been very logical and not very etherical, not very much about angels or wisps in the wind or whatever. But since I came back, I came with a different energy. But still, right when I first came back, I thought I must be crazy. I thought the whole experience was just my brain suffering from suffocation and suffering from lack of oxygen for so long. And it had to be all chemicals. And I actually went to go see a psychiatrist and to see if I was okay. And he said I was fine, but I was delusional. He said I was absolutely delusional about my experience. And so I went away thinking I'm just crazy. And, later on, I actually started realizing that I could hear voices and see things that I didn't used to be able to hear or see. And in doing that, I started bringing up, we'll call it information about my psychiatrist. And after I brought up that information, he said, well, what happened to you really happened to you. Science can't explain it, because what you just told me, nobody could tell me. Not even my own mother could tell me. Only if you were me could you tell me these things. So what happened to you must be real. And so I went forward with the new energy, but I still had that kind of nagging ego thought in the back saying, you're crazy, you're an idiot, don't share this with anybody, they're going to ridicule you. And for a while, I just kind of let that lead me, and I didn't share it with anybody. But recently, you know, or just quickly there after my experience, I did meet my wife, and she was one of those glimmers of light that I got to see. When I first even saw her face, I didn't even know who she was. When I first saw her, I saw that light that I experienced in heaven. I saw it in her eyes. And that's when I knew that we were supposed to get married, and it was very quick. We knew we were going to get married before we really went on a date. And that's kind of how we've lived our whole life since. And what was really neat, though, is she helped me understand that family is so important. And I learned that with my experience, that family and loved ones, you know, because we're all a family as a world here, that all of us are very important to each other, and that we are all fingers on one hand, and that we need to not hurt each other, judge each other, label each other in any way, shape, or form, but we need to love each other, and we need to serve each other. And my wife is the epitome of that. She helped me understand that I needed to be there for my family. And one of those things was to go to a family reunion, which I hated. I hated family reunions growing up. And right after this experience, we went to this family reunion because she helped nudge me into it. And we go to Wyoming, of all places, for this family reunion. And this high school in Wyoming was doing a little presentation on the history of the town to let you know how the town was founded. And so we're sitting in this football field in this area watching the history of the town, and up comes a slideshow of all the different founders of the town. And about halfway through the slideshow, up comes a photo, and it was my guide. When I first saw it, oh my gosh, I couldn't speak. Like, my whole chemistry changed on me. And my wife was sitting right next to me. She was my fiance at the time, and she's next to me, and she's like, is that the guy? That's the guy. She could sense, like, with me what was going on, and she knew, and she could even sense, I described him as, he had these eyes that they're so blue they could pierce you, they could see through to your soul. And she's like, that's it. I know that's it. And I still couldn't talk. And, we had to leave right after that because it was a reckoning for me that I wasn't crazy. That here was an image of a man I'd never seen in my life. He turns out to be my great, 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 great grandfather on my grandmother's side. And his middle name was Drake. And so it was really neat to me to see that confirmation. And, later, a few months later, we're married. And then a few months after that, we had the opportunity to help take care of my grandmother who lived in Wyoming for a few months. And one of the opportunities I had to sit down with her, she met him as a little girl before he passed away. And I asked her, I said, what's the one thing you could tell me about him? Because I think I've met him. And she said, you know what? He has these blue eyes that can look through, and they can see your soul. And it was just really cool. It was like a second confirmation that my multi-sensory experience was real, and that this was not a delusion made in my brain because I didn't have oxygen. And then, fast forward a little bit further, right before my grandmother passed away, my wife got to spend some special time with her, and she was going through some old records and found an old blessing that was given to this guy, Drake. And it was really neat. They had it recorded and written down, and this old blessing, it talked about his life on earth, and it was only a couple of paragraphs, and then he had a whole page of what his duties were going to be after he passed away. And one of his duties was to be an escort for his family and loved ones to help them cross over from the physical world to the heavenly world or the spiritual world. And it was just, here was confirmation number 3 that I wasn't crazy. And so, thank God that he loves us so much, and I don't deserve anything that he's ever given me. I mean, I feel the most, you know, I just don't deserve any of the great things he's given me. But I tell you what, though, the God inside me does. And every single one of us has that piece of God, that spiritual DNA inside of us. And it's really important that we find it, we feed it, and we use intention to strengthen it. And that's what this whole experience is all about. That's the end of my story.
That is beautiful. Yeah, it was lovely. I loved it. So, and I know, Annie, do you want to read off some of the questions that came up?
Yeah, oh my gosh, I have questions, but wow. So Barbara asked, in the hospital, what did you mean that you felt like your free will was gone?
So it felt like a decision or judgment was made above my ability to have intention, that I was going to be forced back. And later on, it took me some understanding and learning to know that it was because it was part of my life path to go in and catch a glimpse of where we all exist in real life, and to come back to the virtual reality where I'm at the, you know, spiritual gym to help build my spirit strength. And it was above my intention. It wasn't allowed that I could have enough intention to stay there for good. I was only going to be allowed to visit there.
And Anna asked, do you still have the ability to access unknown information like you did about your psychiatrist?
Absolutely.
What was your biggest takeaway from the experience?
So I work in sales, and I have to be very careful how I use it, because I'll get information that will help me close an ego sale. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I can get information that can help me close like a divine path sale, right? So I have to make sure I take my intention with the knowledge I get and pursue it the path of higher path, even for the client, not just myself. And a lot of times that goes away from the ego or the commission or whatever. But what's really amazing about it is I built an extremely loyal following in my industry, where there's times where I'm way busier than I know how to do with. Like, for instance, just during this call, 15 phone calls, and it's like I just sometimes can't deal with it all. But that's I have to be really careful with it and pick and choose where I allow it to be used. But the neatest thing for me is, since this has happened, there's been many times where my life path is crossed with people that have recently lost people, lost loved ones. And sometimes just understanding that there's a real experience there, and there's a real place where those loved ones are, and that it's a journey for all of us that we all get to make. And it's a good thing we don't know how good heaven is, because we'd all be buying guns tomorrow. We'd make it a quick journey, because I'll tell you what, if we could even glimmer that the glory that existed in that blade of grass, we would do everything possible that we could on this side to get there, to experience that, to have that, even to have 5 seconds of that light that I felt right from the beginning. Like, you just can't even understand how there's, and to give you a little background, I've been, severely beaten as a kid, as a little kid, beaten unconscious many times, probably 30, 40 times, beaten till I soiled myself, till I threw up, till whatever, hair pulled out of my head. I was raised in a really, really rough upbringing. There was not one thing that I could experience in my life, from the worst possible, that didn't disappear in a half of a millisecond of that light. That light filled up every hole, every hole. Every hole this life could make was filled instantly with that love. But the problem is some of us get beyond this life, and we've built such a shell of victimhood that we don't allow that light in. And what happens is we end up in one of those spheres outside of heaven, outside of God's kingdom, until we can let that cocoon of hatred or anger or victimhood, until we can allow it to be penetrated by God's white light that's constantly being pushed on it from the outside. And finally, you know, some of us will wake up and get through that, and then boom, we can be there. Some of us, we don't, you know, I don't know if it was, I was probably given a special situation with what I went through, since mine was going to be a temporary visit. So I didn't have to go through that necessarily myself, but I'm telling you, let it go. Let go any wrongdoing anyone has ever done to you. Take your worst victim, give them a hug, and take them out to dinner. I mean, you have no idea how freeing that is, not only for your soul, but for your potential. Is you're amplifying your frequency a millionfold for every time you can forgive someone for the worst things. Sorry, did that answer your questions?
There's another part. It's a 3-part question. So there's a third question from Anna. It said, did you receive any information about our collective future?
Yes. So here's something that's really important to you, or really important for all of us. Turn off the damn news. Period. Turn it off. Turn off the news. I don't care what form of it you choose to get on it. When you need to know information, put yourself in a protective state. Go find the information you need, and then cleanse yourself and get back to your light of life, or your life of light. Number one thing, that's the most important thing, because allowing fear only lowers your frequency. Allowing love only raises your frequency. So why feed fear with news? Because that's all news is. I don't care if you're watching, you know, Good Morning America, they'll throw one good story in there every hour. So, okay, so I can beat the crap out of you spiritually for 55 minutes, but if I, you know, give you a cupcake for 5 minutes, is it worth it? No, that's the wrong kind of love. You know, the real love of God is eternal, and we need to understand a principle that our days ahead are better and more glory filled than our days behind. And that is the message eternally for this planet. This planet is on a cycle much larger than what we can understand. This planet is a copy of God's world and was sent in kind of a thrusting away from God's world, but it is on its way back. It's on its journey back. And the planet itself is going to get to a frequency where it's higher than the beings upon it. And when that happens, the lower frequency beings will just start dropping like flies. And it's going to be known in the consciousness and out in the world, and the news will have all sorts of information about it, and how to protect yourself and how to get off this planet that's on a path of death. It's not. The days ahead are glory filled and full of amazing abundance, amazing presence of God, because as we get closer to that kingdom, his force and his strength gets stronger. And I'm sorry if I use the whole essence of being male or female is a physical characteristic, a third dimension, low frequency characteristic. So don't be offended if I use the terminology his when I refer to God, because God is larger than male or female. God is all. God is the everything. God is source and creator. And as we approach getting back to you know, creator or creator's kingdom, only good things come, as long as you have that light and that love. Now, if you are surrounded by fear, you're going to get coronavirus. You're going to get fear things. Surround yourself with light and love, and I would almost be willing to bet $1 million that you could not get coronavirus if you're surrounded with light and love. You can't, because there's not a place for it, unless someone walks up and injects you with it or something.
Even then, when your vibration's high enough.
Yeah, you'll vibrate right through it, baby.
So I have another question from Nicole. Nicole says, please describe your relationship and experience with the water.
Okay, so water was really, really cool. Water there is so much better than water here. Water here is neat because it's a hydrating life force, but there it's a healing force. So you could just put your hand down towards water, and water would like reach up to meet you. And then if you wanted it to go all over you, it would, wherever you wanted it to go. And it would help cleanse you and heal you wherever you wanted to cleanse and heal. But what's the neatest part though is that the fluidity of water is the creator. The creator is fluid in source and theology, I should say, in methodology. And it seems like us as beings, we can raise our frequency the most when we are fluid in our motion. That means sometimes things don't go according to plan, but when we smile about it and we're happy about it, even though it doesn't go the way that we want it to go, that's when we start to really connect to our creator, because he takes us, shows us things that we never would have seen or experienced otherwise. We have to stop building boxes around rainbows, because they disappear when we do that.
Ooh, that's a good quote. I'm going to steal that. So Bianca asked, whatever happened to your friend?
So it's really cool. I've stayed really connected to him. He lives out in Virginia, and really successful in his industry and field. And he works in the health industry, in the supplements. You know, he learned a lot, and I learned a lot from that you really got to make sure you know what you're getting when you order stuff. But he's a great guy. He remembers it very different, because he went in, they pumped his stomach with charcoal. He didn't die or anything. He was fine. But he didn't aspirate, and that's what happened to me. I aspirated. So that's what it, starved me of oxygen. It wasn't the poison itself. It was the actual aspirating.
What do we need to do to raise our frequency?
So I want you to think of Jacob's ladder. At the very top, there's source, creator, love, and omnipresence. And at the bottom, the ego. And the ego is the desire for, power, importance, self-importance, or domineering, or the ability to dominate over another, or a feeling of weakness, or a feeling of injustice, a feeling of not meeting the par or expectation. Any of the negative feelings in this world are at the opposite end of God. Any of them. Now, what's really neat though is what we can learn is we can use what's at the bottom of Jacob's ladder to help us grow and climb to the top of Jacob's ladder. So we've got to learn, that's what this is all about. And at the top is the ultimate frequency, which is God's love. And at the bottom is anger, hatred, self-loathing, judgmental, injustice, victimhood. Does that answer it? Oh, I guess the question is, what can we do, huh? Okay, so. Yeah,
I just wanted you to share kind of some of the things that we discussed and talked about in your session. Not everybody was able to see your video, so I kind of wanted to share some of the things that came out.
Anybody who likes to eat hamburgers, plug your ears real quick. But one of the first things we have to learn is that we need to stop eating each other. And I mean that literally. And once we start learning that the importance of a soul inside of an animal is the same importance to God as the soul inside of a human. And yes, animals have souls, no matter who says they don't. They do. They're on a different path than us. We have an ultimate higher frequency than they can get. But what's really sad is there's a lot of dogs and cats and fish and turtles that are going to get a lot higher than a lot of us, human beings, because of their ultimate serving and loving that they're able to accomplish in their life path. But it all plays into the eternal Jacob's ladder, is we can all go higher and higher on that ladder. And if we're able to get up to that ultimate frequency in one lifetime, we're there. We can live the theology Christian life of one lifetime. But, for a lot of us, that's not possible. We have to, for myself, I've had to really experience a lot of things, which I've learned about since, but I've had to experience a lot of things and a lot of different aspects of life. And like my intrigue as I was traveling, I wanted to learn about everything. And I think that's one of the things why I've had a lot of experiences as I've had to work through and a lot of different things. But yeah, if we go back to the feeding of two wolves, it's a Native American tale where we all have the two wolves within us. We have the white wolf and we have the black wolf. And we feed the white wolf with love. We feed the white wolf with service. We feed the white wolf with selflessness. And we feed the black wolf with fear and with anger and with hatred and with selfishness. And it's up to us to decide who we're going to feed. And the black wolf is going to drag us down that ladder. The white wolf is going to amplify us and elevate us faster than we can know up the ladder. And it's our choice each and every day. And a lot of times when we feed our human bodies here, we're feeding the black wolf. And we have to be very careful and do our own research for our own path of what stuff we should put in our bodies and what stuff we shouldn't. And even with my knowledge base, I still will drink a soda here and there. I still will do something here and there because I'm still a third dimension imperfect form. But the importance is to have the goal, the intention, and let that intention guide you daily, even if you make mistakes. Because as our Creator loves us the same way that we love our children here, when we make simple little mistakes, it's not a big deal. God just wants us to pick up and move on and learn and grow. It's all about growth. It's not about punishment, it's about growth. So those who preach punishment, we're preaching the black wolf. Those who preach progress and elevation and higher frequency, they are coming from the white wolf. Does that answer it?
Yeah, and then there's some other questions. That's all we had on our chat, but I want to ask some questions because, you know, we had an interview before, plus your session. I want to be able to share some of the stuff that came up in there. It's in the interview that we did, but I wanted to tell everybody about corn because this was like new to both of us. And
that elevated my understanding too, because I had kind of gotten I'd done a lot of research on it through the big chemical companies out there, which I guess we have to be careful of recording this. If we even say their name, they could tear this all apart. So I'm not going to say the big M name that's out there, that one of the biggest chemical companies in the world. They control soybeans, and they control a lot of wheat and rice. And it's important that we understand where we're getting our grains, because something that I learned from my experience with Shay is that corn has been plasticized. It's almost like it's been turned into a polymer, like a natural polymer that grows from the earth now. And the reason they've done that is so that they can spray all sorts of horrible chemicals on this corn to kill every living thing that could possibly try to live on that corn, but yet the corn survives. Well, our bodies react the same way as the insects around that corn. We digest it, right? And that corn starts turning us into a polymer. And what happens if you start replacing natural cells with polymer cells in anything is we become rubber and malleable by the forces around you. And it's really important that we understand that you know, when big chemical companies are putting that corn and high fructose corn syrup and all these different corn products in everything, it's in our cereals, it's in our drinks, it's in our juices, it's in our breads, it's in so many different products. We have to be very understanding that is the black wolf. They want to turn off God inside of every one of us. They want us to be created into Barbie and Ken dolls so that it can be, you know, manipulated and posed the way they want us posed. And we're not that. We're the opposite of that. We're free will. We're intention. And with that intention, we have so much power. So it's important that, you know, we recognize the threats. And for me, that was a threat I hadn't fully recognized until my session.
Yeah, and I love the story you shared about your daughter checks all the labels now.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty fun.
She's our corn police now.
Yeah, and so just to share a little bit about the interview that we did earlier, talking about some of the things there, can you share a little bit with us about your son that's coming in?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little kind of background of all that. So when, we were married for 7 years trying to get pregnant the whole time, and we couldn't get pregnant. And I was really tapping into spirit, trying to understand. And they just kept kind of leading me on. Like they knew that it was part of my higher frequency just to be okay with it. And so they just kept making me feel okay with it, that we didn't have a kid yet. So finally, when we got pregnant with our daughter, she's now 10. When we first got pregnant with her, I started seeing this little boy, and he was always dressed in like late turn of the century clothing, like from the 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And I started noticing him laying down with my wife, like cuddling with her while she's, napping. And my wife's pregnant at the time. And finally one day I'm like, I go, babe, there's a little boy laying on your lap right now. And she goes, I know. And she starts describing him to me. And so, over the years, she's actually activating her senses the way that I have it, so that there's times where she's stronger than I am. And then my daughter now, she sometimes comes through as oh my gosh, some of the stuff that she says, and then later she doesn't even remember because she's completely channeling spirit or higher love when she's doing this stuff. But it was really neat. We got to meet this little boy. And he was a constant companion. My daughter would play with him, and she would physically see him as a playmate all the way till she was about 5 or 6 years old. About how, when she was about 6.5, 7 years old, he started to see him less and less around us. And then by the time she was about 8 years old, we didn't see him anymore for a while. We'd see him maybe once or twice a year. We just randomly, we would sense him and feel him and kind of download information from him. And then, for 10 more years, and now we're pregnant again, and we were trying the whole time that time too. And this time we start seeing this little guy again, and he has a name. His name is William Curtis. And this whole time we're talking with him. This is when my wife's about 2 months pregnant, 2.5 months pregnant. And finally I go, hey, do you know who's inside my wife? Do you know who's inside Andrea? And he's like, duh, it's me. And it was the first dawning that I've had this, decade-long relationship with a spirit that is now going to be my son. So that was really, really neat. And since then, Shay, we did find out that is it my great
It's Drake's brother.
Drake's. So Drake, who was my guide, he had a brother who had a son who died. His brother. It was his brother died when he was 8 years old. And that was the age that he showed himself to us. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny that he disappeared in my daughter's life when she became around that time too, around 8 years old. So it's going to be try number 2 for him. But wow. It's really neat though, because we've already known him for 10 years before he was born. So it's awesome. I know a lot about the little tyke.
That's amazing. And then when we were in session, we were able to actually pull him up, and we got messages for the whole family. So that was really cool to be able to experience that. So. That
was awesome. And you know what? If my old personality before my death heard any of this, I'd say you guys are all crazy, just so you know. So if anybody's thinking that, don't worry. I used to be there. I just had to die to raise my frequency.
I think most everybody in this group is probably pretty open to that, for the most part.
Yeah.
The other thing in their interview, which most haven't seen it, is what we discovered in your session was that you were actually a guide for Drake during his lifetime on Earth. And so that was pretty incredible too.
So one really cool thing that I did learn with my passing, and this is something I understood there, is that sometimes our multiple lives are not physical. So sometimes we have an entire experience of a lifetime as a guardian or a guide for someone else who is living in the physical world. And so we can actually pull up, memories, existences, smells, environments, all of that like it was happening to us, but it's from one of our past as a guide or a guardian, because we can actually experience it the same way as the physical person doing, living there. But what's really neat too is sometimes we need to learn a little bit about self-suffering, and we can go spend a few years living or helping out inside of a human being in that consciousness too. So it's just the spirit itself is omnipresent. It can be in multiple places at the same time, the same way that the sun can shine on the earth at so many different places at the same time, but also millions of light years away, it can be shining in that direction too. It's the same principle. We are omnipresent everywhere. We can be omnipresent everywhere. We have that capability or potential, and it's all to help the cycle of building our spirit, building our frequency as we grow. And the same way that, you can Skype yourself, I'm Skyping myself, or I'm Zooming myself into everybody's computer right now. According to logic, that's not possible, but hello, here we are. And that's just with a simple computer. You can imagine with the force and grace and light of our Creator, what our souls are capable of. Way more than a computer, way more.
Mm-hmm.
Your energy is vibrating so high, I can feel it in my ears. Like, I know you're telepathic, because there were things that I was saying in my head that you were answering out loud.
I can't take credit for it. Only Spirit tells me what to say. But you know what? Whenever I hear my ears ring, I actually get kind of excited. I don't go see a doctor. I get excited because that's a download. That's a download. I know it's coming. And if I want to go get myself in a good grounded place, put my feet on natural earth, bare, and really ground out negative energy so that I can connect to whatever's downloading. Because I don't want to waste a download. I don't want to let it go to waste.
That's beautiful. And there's some more questions there, Annie. Do you want to read those?
Yeah, so we have from Anna, it says, do you believe we can come to the point where we no longer have to suffer to evolve?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Through selflessness, we can allow suffering to leave our entire existence. A really good book is called Man's Search for Meaning by a man named Viktor Frankl. And that's something that allows you to come from the lowest depths of the dark wolf, the black wolf, and allows you to understand the process of how to feed the white wolf. It lets you understand that even in the atrocities of the concentration camp where he lived as a boy, he watched perfectly healthy people die weeks or days after coming into the camps, whereas he also saw other people who hugged each other. They shook hands, they smiled. Even in that atrocious environment, they kept their culture of positivity and light. They lived for years in these concentration camps. And he realized that, and you can learn it really quickly in that book, that you're able to guide where your frequency goes on Jacob's ladder. And you can go from the middle frequency and go into one little hardship and plummet instantly, and you're gone. You wasted that whole cycle of physical life. You might as well move on to the next. At the same time, you can be put at the middle of Jacob's ladder and be surrounded with just easy life, and you will plummet the same way. Now, both environments can also build you. So it's really important that you understand that you're the one in control of that elevator. That elevator frequency, those buttons are pushed by you. So you choose where you go with what you put in your eyes, what you put in your ears, what you put in your mouth. What you allow your soul and your physical body to consume raises or lowers you.
It's funny that you mentioned, man, and he was a doctor when he was captured. He had the transcripts in his hand at the time he was.
Oh, that's right. He was older, yeah. But he talked about, I just remember he talked about the boys in the camps were the ones that were like just totally fine because they still play games, and he was really fascinated that the children were the ones that were surviving all this because they would still be happy even though they were hungry. They just let it go and they would move on and have fun.
It's funny you mentioned that book because I just launched a multidimensional book club. We're doing The Alchemist in September. October is Man's Search for Meaning. That's awesome. So for anyone that wants to read along in October, I've scrubbed that book deeply because there's so many pieces in that book. Like there's a part where the women have like lice. Mm-hmm. And other people are feeling sorry for them because they're just like lice going all around them. But the women that had lice were the women that were not being sexually violated. So here's this horrific thing happening to them that everyone else is having pity.
It was protecting them, yeah.
And it was protecting them. So we forget that in life, the universe, God will put things in front of us that we think are like awful, but yet those awful things are what's preventing us from suffering deeper. You know, they actually become the gifts.
And it's really amazing to me since my passing to understand, to get a higher insight to that whenever something bad, what I call bad, happens to me, if I really tap in, I'll understand a higher perspective of what's really going on. And it's really neat. It's kind of like putting up a spiritual drone. You get to get up above the whole experience and see, oh crap, that's what would have really happened to me if I went down that path of success. So, so a lot of times those diverted paths are for our higher being, for our higher frequency. And the cool thing is when you get a really good kid in your life, you can say, hey kid, we're going to Disneyland. They're like, okay, awesome, that's great. And then you say, well, actually we're going to Wendy's. And they're like, okay, that's great. It's like, you can completely change direction to a kid, a happy kid, and they're fine either way. And that's the kind of kid all of us need to be, is that no matter what's going on around us, no matter what news is going up on the screens around us, that nothing can steal that happiness that dwells within us. And what that all dwells with is connecting to source. That spiritual DNA of God is in all of us. So find it. And if you can't find it, go feed a homeless person. Go shake the hand, spend 10 minutes with a homeless person. Listen to them, understand their story, find out how they got there, or serve anyone, serve your worst enemy at work. Literally go buy them lunch. You know what their favorite lunch is. Go preempt it, buy it, and bring it to them and see what happens next. You'll be really amazed at simple little acts of service, spending 5 minutes with somebody who doesn't get anyone to actually treat them as a human, like with a homeless person. You can tremendously activate and recharge that nugget of God inside of you.
So Anna put a quote from Buddha about being childlike, and right at the same time, Anna, that you did that, I was hearing, be like the lilies of the field. Yeah,
exactly. And remember, the boats that win the race are the ones that take all the hurdles and keep bobbing, enjoy the journey, and know that it's all built for our betterment. Even the hardships, see the silver lining on every cloud.
So I have an intuitive question for you.
Sure.
So Nicole said while she was sleeping this morning, she felt a bird fly out of the top of her head and felt the wings flutter and heard them.
So it's part of what this experience tonight is going to help her do. It's going to enable her to get to higher heights in the future. And it's not only going to enable, it's going to activate the ability, like that bird, to quickly and lightly move out and go around and do whatever it needs to do. The same essence is inside her. And what's really neat, and that's something I actually did learn in the years past, I've learned the actual spot on our head where our soul actually is able to go and work and plug in and work and plug in and work and plug in. And we're all computers, by the way. We are. These physical bodies are computers, and we can plug them in and we can talk to God, and we can even talk to each other without using any words. And I've had some really cool experiences where I tell my friends what's going to happen, and then it happens, and they're like, "Are you psychic?" And I'm like, "No, I just told their higher guides to come over and do that," and then they do it, and it's really neat because as long as you're doing it out of light and love and betterment of both of you, they usually do it, and no matter what you're asking, and it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, and could you explain to them, because in their session it talked about how that light, how you connect it, use that light to connect to the other person. Can you kind of give us a little insight on that?
The easiest, so it's really weird. I actually see it happen when I'm doing it. I actually see like an extension of my intention, like arcing, and it arcs like in a perfect bow up to the higher. There's kind of like a spiritual stratosphere around the earth. And we plug into that, and it's an internet of spirit. We can actually go anywhere in the universe as we plug into that. And again, for those who are feeling this sounds really crazy, don't worry. You're hearing descriptions of a path that you're at the beginning of. But when you plug into this, you can literally go see the dirt on Mars, or you could go see the Palladian galaxy. You can go and see all sorts of things, and it's an internet with ultimate source, and it's God's love that allows you to travel and go with your intention anywhere you want to go. And what was cool though is what came out in my session is my guy Drake told me, he's like, hey, you know, in other words, reach out, dude. You can come to heaven anytime you want and learn more about it, but you haven't been reaching out. So come on, reach out. And I've been talking to him ever since I died. So it's like, it didn't even dawn on me that I should be doing that. And that was pretty neat. But that's how it happens for me. And I've actually seen other people do it. They don't know that they're doing it. Like my wife does it all the time, and she doesn't know she's doing it. Then she'll try to do it, and she kind of like blocks herself from being able to do it. But when she's not thinking about it, she plugs right in, she sends the message, the little kid runs over doing exactly what she wants him to do. And it's like, you know, everyone always has called her the child whisperer, and it's because she has that gift, you know, and it's been by nature. And when you're really good at something, that's where it's coming from. It's coming from being able to plug in and connect to the network, you know, God's network. And there's no company that you have to pay internet bills to get in there.
The caveat on what you're saying, if you go in, you get the requested information, like I uploads, the downloads. There were times where I wanted to stay on the bridge because it felt so good, and I would get kicked off. Like, no, you're not living life. You're not allowed back here until you're.
Yeah, a lot of people call it the gap. So a lot of people call that space the gap. Like, I'll see you in the gap. A lot of people, and it's not the store you buy clothes. It's a place. It's the gap between the physical world and the spiritual world. And there's truly the veil, and the veil itself is what you're plugging into, and that's what the network is. But what's cool is what's on the other side of the veil is God's pure light and love and his kingdom. And it's getting closer and closer, and that veil is literally getting thinner. And that's not just me saying that. There's hundreds of thousands of people on the same path I am right now that are saying the same thing. And I've seen it everywhere, that veil is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And you're actually hearing that in a lot of Christian faiths right now too, that veil is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. That means God is getting more connected to you. So make sure you're getting more connected to him, or to take away the presence of masculinity. Get connected to source.
Yeah, and I want to point out here too, because this has been coming up in a lot of my sessions, that we all need the veil, because that veil is getting thinner. And you were talking about how the earth is moving into the different frequency. If we don't change the vibration that we're in, then we will expire and leave too. And so yes. I was given the message that I need to get on my path to get my body in alignment and do what I need to do, because they need me here to do my work. And if I don't get my body in alignment and the frequency raised enough, then I will check out. And I know that that's important for all us light workers.
We have to get our decisions to a point where we're 60% of our decisions are raising our frequency. And once we get there, we'll have the momentum to go even higher. But that's where our goal needs to be initially, is, you know, more than half our decisions need to raise our frequency. And they're simple, they're easy. Sometimes that check-in on Facebook is an ego check-in. Sometimes it's a love stewardship check-in. Sometimes it's a I want to plug some positive energy out in the universe check-in. But make sure you're directing that check-in. And that's with everything. Yeah.
And then the one last thing I want to ask you about or talk about really quick is because you were raised Mormon, you went on a Mormon mission, and you're involved in that religion. How does this experience play out with your religion? Because there's a lot of belief systems that are outside of that religion box. So I'm just curious how that is playing out for you.
So every time someone says, well, you're Mormon, you must believe this. I say, well, if you want to draw that circle around me, I'll draw you a larger circle that puts both of us in it. And that large circle of all the universe is God's circle. And one of my best friends here in Vegas, his name is Mars. And he says, Vinney, you're like a spiritual ninja. And to me, that's what it's like. I pull and draw from all faiths. I really do. A lot of Christians are going to have a really hard time with who they see in heaven. There's a lot of Muslims and Hindu and a whole lot of Jews and a whole lot of Romans, even Nazis, even in heaven, that they had their own path that they had to learn and grow. I didn't see Hitler there, so I don't think he's there. I think there's some special orb for him out there that he's got to work off his stuff. Or maybe he's had a few more cycles since, who knows. Actually, maybe he's in politics. I'll bet he's in politics right now.
Probably.
But you know what, though? But truly, you know, we all have amazing things to learn from each other. And to judge someone and to say that they're not like me is ignorant. It's like one finger looking at another saying, that's not like me. Hey, that's not like me. Well, if you looked at the finger from the other side, you'd say, oh, that's the same as me. You're just seeing it from the wrong side. And we're all fingers, like I said before, we're all fingers on God's omnipresent hand. Every single one of us. It doesn't matter our color. It doesn't matter our creed. It doesn't matter our religion. We all are God's faith. And that one day there's going to be the true religion exposed to us. And there is only two religions in all of the world. And that is the religion of the white wolf and the religion of the black wolf. And guess what? Both religions exist in every single theology. Even Buddhism, every single theology has the white wolf and the black wolf. And it's up to us to find the white wolf wherever we go. And that's what I choose to do. So I practice a lot of habits and practices of someone who's maybe Hindu, because I do a lot of meditating. But at the same time, I do Christian meditating, and I really connect to a Savior, because the Savior Christ is a real being for me and is a real Savior for me. And I've really been able to enlighten myself there. At the same time, I've been able to connect to Buddha, and I've been able to connect to Muhammad with his intentions, and not with the religion, but with his intentions for the religion. And how that the story of a Savior has been taught on the earth for thousands and thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years. And it's just been taken many different directions as faith. And I go back to that saying that I said earlier, stop building boxes around rainbows, because when you do, they disappear. And a religion is a box around a rainbow.
Very nice. I love all of your metaphors that you use. I think they're pretty incredible. So there is another question here on the board. And then I would like you to talk a little bit about what your future looks like with this question also. Annie, do you want to go ahead and read that?
So Anna asked, can you tell us more about what we have to look forward to in this lifetime?
Yes. So we have a future path, that there is some bumps in the road, some bumps coming pretty immediately, and then some more bumps after that, in a period after that. But the good news is that all those bumps are to help raise our frequency. And if you understand the perspective that no matter what hardship is broadcast across the news, don't buy into it. Understand the higher path to every hardship. And once you realize that, there's no hardship existing. All there is learning opportunities for everything. And so there's some learning opportunities ahead of us, but on the other side of that is absolute glory. We will be amazed at the miracles done by ourselves, miracles done by light workers, miracles done by those who represent the light, those who represent God's light on earth. Some people would call that God's power on earth, but the power, the light, the love, it's all one thing, it's love. And we've got to be agents of love everywhere we go. And once we really dignify that and sanctify that inside of us, then we're protecting ourselves, that no matter what's going on around us, God is leading our higher path. And we have to understand something, that turn off the news and understand one principle. God is not going to take you one day before your path is done. Not one day, not one moment, not 1 second. And and have faith in that. Let the fear go. Live your path. Don't surround yourself with what's my blood pressure today? What's this today? What's that today? Do your due diligence to do what you know you need to do, but don't let the black wolf motivate you. Let the white wolf of knowledge that your path ahead is better than your path behind, and that God, the creator, is not going to take you off of this planet one moment before your time is done. But here's another principle, is don't think you can extend your time here by one extra milkshake, or one extra fitness running, or one extra weightlifting, or one extra meditation. God's going to take you at the perfectly right moment, and you need to be okay with that. But you need to be okay if that's 100 years or 1 year or 1 day. You need to be okay with it. And once you're okay with it, you can feed the white wolf.
Yeah, that is incredible, and it's beautiful. So I wish we could wake more people up and get them out of that fear mode, you know.
We all can. Every one of us tonight can move on from here. Even myself, even knowing this, to even discuss it and talk it more helps strengthen it for myself. And now tomorrow I can even be a better representative of light in my daily habits.
Yeah. And I do want to take just like 5 minutes to just send loving energy out to those in the world that need it right now. Our president, the people who are, and I know there's a lot of people, it's not about politics, it's about the people who are leading our country right now. And they need our help and our support, and all those people who are just together in love. We're all here together in love. So I do want to take about 5 minutes to do that. But is there any other questions or anything else that you want to leave with us tonight, Vinney, before we move on to that?
I just want you to understand that there's nothing more important in this life than love, and understand that anything that is taking that love from you or robbing you of feeling love for yourself, you need to get rid of. I'm talking to one specific person in this group. They need to let go of self-loathing. They need to let go of, okay, now we're talking to a few people.
I heard that in your head.
They need to let go of self-judgment. They need to let go of all of that, because to judge yourself is to judge God. And to think that I want you to visualize that if you watch a toddler fall down or climb up a tree and start hanging from the tree, and that toddler's about to fall out, if the toddler yells for help, are you going to sit and judge that toddler? Are you going to sit there and think, did they make their bed today? Did they put their dishes away? Did they wash their hands today? What are we going to do? As human parents, what are we going to do? We're going to run with every strength we have, and we're going to grab that toddler. And every single one of us need to understand that's an inkling of God's love. That's an eyelash to the Niagara Falls of God's love. God's love is so much more than we could even understand. And we have to understand, we have to let go of ego. We have to let go of self-judgment or self-loathing. We have to let go, and we have to look in the mirror and absolutely love who we see. And when we do that, we can actually embody that love of God.
Are you tapping into the energy of the group? Is that what you're getting?
Yeah.
So what does that feel like when you tap into the group?
It feels really good. We have some really enlightened beings here, and I love this community. I just love people that are open to learning about light.
Beautiful.
Vinney, if we wanted to follow you on social media, how can we do that?
I'm on Facebook on Vinney Todd Tolman, and if you friend request me, I'll just accept. I'm on Twitter a little bit, but I try to stay off doing tweets, because I tend to get political if I do tweets. And me having my experience, just so you know, I am an absolute libertarian, because I think that we should all have the agency to go the direction of what we connect to as our right path. And I don't like to sway far left or far right. I like to sway up to God. And unfortunately, up to God is away from politics. So we still have to be involved in a protected state. But just like we talked in the beginning, put that protection up, allow yourself the exposure, and then draw back and do a cleansing, because you don't go ruck your hands around in a toilet and then go prepare dinner. So, cleanse yourself. Make sure that you're keeping a good separate barrier from politics. Facebook is the most common for me, if anybody wants to get on with me.
Oh, that's what, can you spell your name out so people know how to find you?
It's Vinney, spelled Vinney, and then my middle name Todd, Todd, and then last name Tolman, Tolman.
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you say about this whole censorship? Is this part of us getting over the hurdles to getting to the truth and getting and growing? Is it part of our growth?
Well, there's a strong force that is the religion of the Black Wolf, that they have controlled the Earth's narrative for a long time, and they are losing control of that narrative. And it's the freedom of the internet and the freedom of free agency to not necessarily buy into the hype of everything that is allowing us, almost our distraction is allowing us to not buy into the narrative being put across the world. And it is important for us to understand that force is a real force, that religion of the Black Wolf. It exists. It's a very real religion. And there's a lot of different names for it. DC is full of 99.9% Black wolves in our country. And then the leadership of most countries are led by Black wolves. So we have to be really careful and protect ourselves from that. And it's all for our well-being. That there's a scripture for those Christians. God says he doesn't want us to be lukewarm. He wants us either hot or cold. And for too long in America, we've been allowed to be lukewarm oatmeal. And now we got to throw in some Cajun sauce. We got to throw in some heat or some ice. We have to separate ourselves to what we are. We are either going on a good path, or we are actively and not trying to hide that we're going a very bad path. But that's the path of America, is a separation to understand that you can be authentically good and you can be authentically bad, and both are okay. And both are okay to God, but he wants us choosing a side. He wants us choosing. He wants us to choose to do good or choose to do bad, but do it authentically. Don't try to hide it.
That's beautiful. And then there is another question here from Barbara. What are your thoughts on the higher perspective of this virus story?
The virus is the collar on the Black Wolf. I'll leave it at that. And can you take a collar off? Yeah, it's simple. You just clip it with your hands and it just falls to the ground. So will it have power on you? Absolutely. If you go down the path of the Black Wolf and surround yourself with negative thoughts and fears, you could probably catch coronavirus without even being exposed to it. And I would be highly, I would almost challenge science to prove that that's possible, because I believe it is, that you can catch corona without even being exposed to it, because chemical in all of us that activates with fear and with lower frequency energies in our body.
And that has come up in so many of my sessions, especially lately, because everybody's concerned about the virus. And that's what it says every single time. When you're lowering your vibration down into fear and anger, you're opening yourself up for that virus to just slip right in. Every session.
It's kind of funny if you study, the first fluoride was ever used on human beings was in Hitler's concentration camps. And he found that if he could add fluoride to the water, that the members of the concentration camp became very much complying to their demands. And that force of trying to chemically alter the being for following along with the demands of the leader, that's still on today. And I see corona as that. And it's something that the same way that inside those concentration camps, even the kids that were drinking the fluoridated water, they still were able to be happy. And because they dwelled in a place that their spirit was not going to be doused out, even with horrible things going on around them, they still chose to look up and see the sunshine and see that there was birds flying around all around, and to see all sorts of beautiful things going on all around them. They chose to see God everywhere they went, and they were able to survive a lot of these horrible, horrible conditions that those who surrounded themselves with victimhood and hurt, they died right away. And we have that choice every day. And that's what the coronavirus is. It's something that can be activated or deactivated in any one of us. If we're going up the ladder, we're going to deactivate it. If we go down the ladder, we're going to activate it.
Okay, well, Vinney, gosh, I so appreciate you coming up here today and just giving us all your information, because you're such an amazing, beautiful soul. So thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming on here, because it takes courage to step outside your box. It takes a little bit of the adventure spirit to step outside your box. It was one of the hardest things for me to do, was to still continue to be active in my religion with my knowledge base. But what I've since connected to is that we can choose any source to motivate us to do good. And that's what I choose my religion to be, is I choose it as kind of a guideline, but I also choose to not let it build my box around a rainbow. I allow other information to come in as long as it raises that frequency. As long as it gets me closer to God, I have no problem embracing something. And I want to say thank you to anybody who is living on the cusp of their beliefs with this, because it's uncomfortable in the beginning. But once you understand that God's the one who wrote the map, that he's the one that created all the religion, because he cares about every one of us. It's because he never abandoned one culture or one race or one continent. He's planted his love everywhere, but so has the dark wolf. And so that's why in every religion you see the presence of the dark wolf and the white wolf. And you'll see people that really let the white wolf lead them around in Islam, in Hinduism, in Judaism, in Catholicism, in all forms of Christianity. And at the same time, you see very strongly led black wolves in all of those faiths as well. And that just goes to show you that in every one of our own paths, we get to choose. We get to choose in our own religion. We can be actively embracing our religion and still choose the white wolf everywhere we go. We don't, and when we hear the black wolf, or we hear some ego talking next to us from our own faith, we can understand what that is. It's a misguided little toddler hanging in a tree. And when they call for help, you're going to run as fast as you can, and you're going to help them. But just wait till they call for help. Then you can do it.
It's like the sorting hat with Harry Potter, and Harry Potter's got the sorting hat, and he's like, you would be great in Slytherin. And he's like, no, but I want Gryffindor. Like, you can have good or evil. You're capable of both.
Gryffindor and Hufflepuff are God's houses, just so you know. Just kidding.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. And then everyone, the link that I sent to everybody, the interview that Vinney and I did earlier in the week is on the bottom of that. Please go and enjoy the video. And I am going to start encouraging people to leave comments, just, if you wouldn't mind, just so that we can start building that exposure to the YouTube channel and the different stories that are out there. So I appreciate it.
Real quick, before we end, I just saw that last question pop up. If I want to chime in about the fallen angel, Lucifer,
Okay.
We have to understand that we sit there and we look down the bottom of Jacob's ladder and we see Lucifer at the bottom. He's at the very bottom, and he is the kind of the master of the black wolf. And he runs a lot of what goes on in the religions of the black wolf. And he sees himself in Catholicism and Islam and even in the Mormon faith and Christianity. He sees himself everywhere. And what's really neat, though, is when you step back and realize that Jacob's ladder was built by God. Think about that. That's pretty amazing that God built the bottom of the ladder as well as the top of the ladder. And where is the bottom? Distance from him. And where is the top of the ladder? next to his bosom, next to her bosom, next to the heart of source. And that's where the top of the ladder is. But guess what? Just because that ladder has a dark area doesn't mean that it doesn't serve to help our progress. It's really important that we understand that.
Right, and that's one thing that you said in the interview that I do want to point out is like every time that we decide to come here and incarnate here, we decide what we want to learn, and the part of that learning is getting up that ladder. So with each lifetime that we come here, could you just give us a really quick analysis of that?
So it's really funny. My daughter, this is her first incarnation. So she went straight from guardian / angel type being, where she's done a lot of cycles of being a guardian for a lot of others. And this is her first time being in the physical. And it's funny because, you know, her whole, young adolescent age was just so full of light. If I ever needed light, I would just go sit next to her and listen to her pretend. And I could feel God's light, even in her pretend world. And she just, it's really cool because, where I saw that in my wife's eyes, when she first came, I thought, well, that's why she has it so strong, because it's inside my wife. And I experienced it outside me, and I'm still trying to find it inside me. So maybe a little piece of the inside of God, inside me, went into her. But no, it's because she hardly, she didn't have any cycles before this in a physical body. But there's a lot of us that have different paths, the same way that in life, there's masons, there's carpenters, there's computer technicians, there's beauticians, there's nurses, there's doctors, there's professors. Every single one of us has a different path. And the beautiful, amazing thing is God, at every moment of our existence, is constantly catering that path for us, the individual. And sometimes that does take a few lives, a few cycles to get through so that we can learn what we need to learn. But do we need to sit there and look at someone like my daughter that looks like she's maybe only going to have one cycle and then she's right there with the rest of us? Does that mean that I need to judge that? No, because that's one finger looking at another. I need to celebrate all progress of any form, from the bottom of the ladder to the top of the ladder. When someone takes one step, I need to have a party and put something natural in my body.
Well, beautiful.
That's not corn.
Yeah, not corn, exactly. All right, well, I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, but if we could just for a couple of minutes, just take 2 minutes of silence and send out beautiful healing energy to anybody that, needs healing tonight. And especially for our leaders of our country or whoever we need to help, send love out to that place. If we just take a couple of minutes to do that, appreciate it. All right. I appreciate everyone.
Hey, before you end, Shay, I want to thank you for this platform, for allowing us to get together like this. I wanted to thank you for this platform and this means for us to get together like this. Thank you. Thank you for your work and your network of bringing us together tonight.
Thank you. And thank all of you. So, yes, I love all of you and thank you so much. And next, in September, I've asked Ren, and Ren is on here tonight. I've asked Ren to speak to us about her session. And I don't know, Ren, if you want to like wave at everybody so everybody can see who you are. So anyway,
hey,
she wasn't here when we did introductions, but Ren and I have done about 3 sessions now, and she's been channeling some great information. In fact, I was able to connect with my husband last Saturday, and it was flippin' amazing. I just have to tell you, and he came through, it was beautiful. So we're going to share some of Ren's session stories and stuff next on the first Thursday in September. So hopefully all of you will be able to join us then. So, all right. Thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you in September. Good night.
Sending everyone in God's light. Love you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Same back at you.
Bye.